Good morning, everybody. It's 8:30. It's time to call the meeting of Tuesday, August 5th to order. Our first item of the agenda is to approve the agenda, and we'll go from there.
Move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to citizens to be heard. Do we have anybody in the audience today who wishes to be heard on items that are not on the agenda? Any citizens to be heard? One more time. All right, we'll move on. The next, we have some employee recognitions. So, over here. And these are, is this working? Yeah. Okay. We have some longevity awards to give out today, and the first one is to Amy Amundsen with the social worker. Amy? Good morning.
Good morning.
Presented to you in grateful recognition of 15 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you very much. Next we have Tracy Simon. Tracy. Good morning, Tracy. And this one says, presented in grateful recognition of 15 years of outstanding and dedicated services to Clay County and its citizens. This one is for Carrie. Carrie Salway, presented in grateful recognition of 25 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Yeah, 25 more.
Yes, I do.
All right. And Sharon Holtz. There's Sharon. Good morning.
Morning.
And this is also presented in grateful recognition of 25 years of dedicated and outstanding services to Clay County and its citizens. Congratulations. And then we have Sandra Thorne. And of course we have to have somebody who beats them all, right?
That makes me old.
Good morning, Sam.
Good morning.
Presented in grateful recognition of 30 years of dedicated and outstanding service to Clay County and its citizens. That's quite an achievement. She said she started when she was 12. Well, thank you to all of you for those many years of good service. The county is better off having you work. Okay, Sheriff Berquist, do you want to use this mic or do you want to use the podium?
We'll just go right here.
Okay.
Thank you for giving us a few minutes here today to honor one of our deputies, Deputy Lee, with the Sheriff's Medal. With that, I'm going to call up Lieutenant Steve Todd, who nominated him for this award. And
I submitted a nomination for Deputy Lee for outstanding work as a school resource officer, and we actually have some representatives from the schools that Jeff is serving. Principal Kent Hendrickson is here from the Ulen-Hitterdal School District, Principal Chris Ellingson from the Holly Elementary, and Principal Mike Martin from Holly High School. So we're thankful for them to come. If you guys want to say anything after we're done here, we'd more than welcome you. I'll read the memo quickly here that I submitted to Sheriff Berquist regarding this award. This week I met with school officials from the Holly and Ulen-Hitterdal school districts to discuss the job performance of Deputy Jeff Lee in his school resource officer position. I spoke with Superintendents Todd Cameron, Phil Jensen, Principals Kent Hendrickson and Mike Martin, as well as dozens of faculty, staff, and students. I left each of these meetings with a clear message that Deputy Jeff Lee is doing a remarkable job as our SRO, and he has surpassed our expectations in terms of relationship building with all parties involved. The SRO project development has spanned years and involved work by several people. The success of this project hinged on selecting the right employee for the job. We depended on Deputy Lee to fill this role and actually forge what the SRO meant to Ulen-Hitterdal and Holly. We now have a clear answer that the SRO can become an integral part of the school districts as well as the sheriff's office, making a positive difference for our community. My interviews with the school administrators yielded some key comments about Deputy Jeff Lee's job performance. These are some of the quotes. Jeff has become a face of the school in a good role. Relationships with students are at a very high level. An A grade all the way around. Works great with kids and staff, does the job very well. Kids trust and accept him. Knows all the kids' names. Staff really appreciates having him here too. He's developed a pipeline for information from kids. He has a balanced approach with kids of all ages. Does really good at keeping staff updated on things, including where he's at and what's going on. The interviews with faculty and staff were also impressive. They are truly thankful to have Deputy Lee in their schools and inform me he is making a difference. One of the lunch servers at Ulen informed me that the kids are more respectful since Deputy Lee began as the SRO. Countless teachers inform me that Deputy Lee is helpful and excellent at relationship building with the students as well as the staff. All of them have stated that Deputy Lee has been doing a great job and the position of school resource officer has been a positive improvement for their school. I spoke with multiple students ranging in age from second grade to high school seniors. I observed that the students are extremely fond of Deputy Lee. The responses to my questions about him were enthusiastic and excited. They believe he is really nice, easy to get to know, trustworthy, and they say they would not hesitate to go to him with a problem they were having. They informed me that they feel safer with Deputy Lee in their schools. The students were emphatic in their responses to my question if Deputy Lee should continue as an SRO next year, usually with a shouted response of yes. Some followed up by asking me, "You're not thinking of moving him, are you?" My day spent interviewing all of these people about Deputy Jeff Lee was one of the best days of work I've had in years. I left the schools filled with pride and thankfulness that Deputy Jeff Lee has immersed himself into this position and worked so hard to make the SRO position succeed. His friendly and easygoing personality, good judgment, hard work ethic, and interpersonal skills have been keys to his success. Giving extra of himself with things like attending school sporting events and dances during his off-duty time also showed he believed in what he was doing. We gave Deputy Lee a huge responsibility with this position, and so much groundwork hinged on his success. We now have a clear answer that school resource officers are not only welcomed in our schools, but they are wanted in our school districts. Pursuant to awards policy, I am submitting a nomination for Deputy Jeff Lee to receive the Sheriff's Medal due to his performance as our school resource officer. This award is reserved for sworn deputies who distinguish themselves with an act which significantly benefits the office or the community. Considerations for this award include demonstrating outstanding leadership, professionalism, community service, or any act deemed by the sheriff to have significantly benefited the sheriff's office towards the accomplishment of its mission and goals. Deputy Jeff Lee has met these criteria during this first year of our highly successful school resource officer project. I recommend we recognize him for this success as well as express our gratitude to him for his performance by awarding him the Sheriff's Medal. Thank you.
To speak today. I just want to say thank you to you guys, along with my supervisors back here, for helping get this project started. You know, a lot of people at a lot of different levels were involved here, along with the Hawley and the Ulen Hitterdal school districts for, you know, not only supporting the program and welcoming me, but you know, helping me along the way. It was new for all of us, and you guys helped guide me as well. And my family, my dad, Greg Lee, my mom, Patricia Lee, my wife, Stacy Lee's there, and our two boys, Elliot and Ezra, are here. So thank you to everybody that's helped me along the way, along with, you know, the students and their parents that have helped me as well. So thank you.
Deputy Lee, I think Deputy Lee, on behalf of the board, we want to congratulate you too. This is quite an honor for you. And I do want to say that that this shows clearly how when different governing agencies can work together and collaborate on something really good comes from it. We're very pleased that we worked with the Holiday School System to help get this in place. It was a combined effort amongst many, and the end result is when we get to give out awards for its success. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
Bill, did you have anybody else who wanted to talk? Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming. All right, well, that was good. All right, our next item of business is approval of the minutes from the 15th and the 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Approval of the bills.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, it's 8:40. We're going to get an update on the motor vehicle remodeling project with Administrator Brian Berg. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Well, it's been a little time in coming, but I think we're nearing the very end of this project, and this is the final change order for the, it's only the second one, but there's been several minor changes in here, one or two more major ones, but the one got a little bit greater than what we had anticipated, the $2,400 one for the moving the heater, the water heater, but I have to blame Commissioner Gross for that one. He picked out that one too.
I'll take the blame for that.
We can talk a little bit about that, but anyway, attached is a change order number 2 for the motor vehicle remodeling project in the amount of $9,070, which completes all changes to the project. You'll recall that change order number 1 dealt with the floor covering, and that really should have been included in our feelings to the original bid. The rubberized carpeting that was originally slated for that just wasn't a good fit, and we discovered that early on and made that change, and that was in the range of $12,000. So out of the $25,000 changes that have taken place, about half of that was for that floor covering. So when you start thinking of the overall changes, if you remove the floor, it's only about a 2 or 3%. On a remodeling project, that's pretty good. Usually over 8 to 10% on change orders. So we feel pretty good about that. It appears that we've expended all of the bonding funds, and we use the capital improvement funds for the parking lot improvement, which is what we expected to do. So we're right on target for that. And I know you know this, but I'll just remind you of it, that prior to the remodeling project, driver's license testing rented 547 feet, and it was just that north side of that space at $7.50. And now Georgia has negotiated with driver's license, and she did early on about this, which I have to compliment her on it. And they now will be leasing 1,162 square feet at $12.75, which will net us, which will yield us $14,800, which is about a net increase of $10,700. But of course, you realize that there will be some additional heating costs and cleaning costs for that. But pretty soon, over 10 years, that's $100,000. That's pretty good revenue.
That's good.
That's very helpful. So we can certainly go over the change orders. I know you had these ahead of time, and if you have any questions on any of, I think there was 9 or 10 items. The one, I'll just mention that Jet existing, it's about 3/4 of the way down the sewer lines to remove existing debris. That, we ran into that problem because of the old highway building, and those lines were being reused, and they were plugged with sand and grit, and we had to jet those out in order, unexpected. But we were having backup in the sewers, and that's where that last one comes from, replacing the water damaged carpet tiles of $138, is because they got wet from sewer backup, and we didn't want to start out a new facility with those, so we had those replaced as well. So I would ask for your approval for the changes of the $9,000, or I think it was $9,070 for one motion, unless there's some questions.
Yeah, because change order 1 was already approved, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
Two and a second. Any further discussion? Frank?
One question, that insulated vestibule addition, I mean, I realize it's a $615 is a minor amount, but shouldn't that have been included when we put the vestibule on? Shouldn't they have included insulation, or what's that, though? Do you know what that was about?
I remember when they were putting that in, and at one of the construction meetings, he talked about having that sprayed, those beams, because there would be condensation. And no, I don't think the architect realized that needed to be insulated, and there would be condensation that would be building on the ceiling if those beams weren't insulated, because there's steel beams up on top of that, remember? So, that was their recommendation, to insulate them.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Brian, before you go on this issue, I sent you a deal yesterday, or I believe it was, asking questions about when the numbering system is going to be up and running. There's
Yes.
still some frustration over there with that.
Yes, and I did follow up on that, and I was assured that it was going to be started, the electrician was going to get over there yesterday and then finish it up Wednesday, and then later in the day, I got an email that the electrician didn't make it over there yesterday, but promised to be there Wednesday and finish up Thursday. So
Okay, all right.
hopefully it
So
will
the-
be done today.
So then they won't have to
This
play
week.
musical chairs anymore over there.
I think it was just really
Noticed that.
so much anxiety.
Yeah.
If you can come in and take a number, and if it's going to be 20 minutes, you sit down and...
Well, if you go there and watch right now, it's quite comical, because everybody sits in these chairs, and people stand in it, and as one person, everybody moves over a chair.
That's right. Yeah,
And it's kind of silly.
it is.
So
It
we
is.
just need to get the numbering system in
So this
place.
is a different kind of system than before, though?
Absolutely.
It's electronic?
Yes, it's electronic one. There will be numbering systems above each workstation and a master number so that it advances, and you will know. And there's also a color-coded, you'll have one number to take for, because there's really two issues out there.
Right.
It's vehicle renewals and it's driver renewals.
Right.
And that's how we separated them, and we even have color-coded numbers and a different number system. There's 3 numbers for the drivers, and I think it's 2 numbers for the vehicle. And hopefully when you come in, that sign tells you if you're there for driver's renewal, you'll take this number. If you're there for vehicle renewal, you'll take this number.
When you go into a different waiting room as well, won't you?
No, now the driver's testing is a third operation. This is just the renewals. The county just handles the renewal part of it. But fortunately, unfortunately, after 9/11 and some of the homeland security issues, driver's license becomes a permanent ID, and they're really touchy about what documents they, and as Commissioner Gross can attest to, when he's been looking at that, some of those operations are 30 minutes long by the time they get
Oh, yes.
the needed information that they need. And they're dealing with foreign people coming in for IDs and driver's license, and then they have to have interpreters with them, and it really is more difficult. And I know some people get frustrated with it, and I think we're trying to react to the demand there. But boy, you come in for a Class 1, a commercial driver's license renewal, you have to have your medical certificate with, and you have to have a lot of other things with it. And that's why we needed the seclusion somewhat for the privacy issues and things. So I think it's going to be a good operation.
Okay, so now we need to approve the lease, correct?
Yes,
That's the other
please.
issue you wanted us to do?
Yes.
Okay, so we have before us a proposed lease of 1,162 square feet at $1,275, which would be annually would be $14,815.50.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
the lease. And a second. How long of a lease is this? How many years?
We haven't heard back from the state yet. Usually they propose about 3 to 5 with a step increase, but we haven't got the actual documentation.
So this lease that we're approving is going to be 3 to 5 years, or? should
Waiting
we,
here from the state yet.
well, if we don't know the term on it, we
Yeah.
shouldn't be voting on it.
No, well, Mr. Chair, what we were hoping for is we have a lease with them right now.
Okay.
And I was hoping that this would cover the remainder of the term of the lease, because there has to be
But is there language to support that?
I thought there would be today, yeah, so. We can wait on that, that's not an
Will
issue.
it hurt anything by?
No, it won't.
But then I really think that we should wait.
Yep.
We have a motion and a second, what's,
I'll
Yeah.
rescind my motion.
okay, is that okay? I think we need to have
I
all
think you're
all
right,
of that,
yeah.
So we need to know if an extension of the current lease
Or a new lease.
plus an additional, you can add on to an extended lease.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but we need to know that before we respond. Oh,
very good.
thank you, Brian.
Well, and one more thing, if I may, Mr. Chair. I think sometimes people don't realize how busy, and you guys have talked about that, but I've mentioned to many of the county employees that this is the busiest workstation, I think, in county government out there. But in order to make this happen, halfway through my remodeling process, we moved from one half to the other and then moved back again. And it really involved a lot of people. Can you imagine IT and the different electronics, and then maintenance was just super to work with in making this move and changing back, and they're still finishing up. So there's really a lot of people that I'd like to thank, because this was you folks funded it, and
They put up with a lot, but then again, so did all of our citizens.
and so did the citizens. So I guess my thank you goes out to everybody
Yeah, you
that
bet.
participated to make this
Thank you, Brian.
visit through. Thank you.
So we can have this on next week then?
You betcha.
Okay, I guess at this point, we're going to our committee reports. Frank, are you ready for yours?
Yes, let's see, Wednesday, July 23rd, I went up to Felton Township for a discussion between, there's a good discussion on, Felton Township's right on the county line. It takes care of the roads when they're on the county line. You know, which township, Norman County or Clay County, and they got a project going on there where on that one township mile, 3 miles are taken care of by Norman County, 1 mile. They got a bridge in there, the 3 miles where the mile where the bridge is at, Felton Township's responsible for that half of the mile. So when the bridge goes in, who's responsible for it? I thought it was interesting. I don't know if there's a standard in our county procedure and how it's supposed to be done, I thought it was an interesting thing. Right now, Felton Township's being stuck with the whole $20,000 for that bridge replacement, and it's right on the county line. So,
Did we talk to the engineer about it?
yes, I have, and they're understanding they were charging Felton Township, and it's up to them to negotiate with Norman. And I don't know if that's where it's at right now, anyway.
So it crosses, so is it the dividing township road between the two counties?
Right.
Okay.
So I don't know if we have a policy or not,
Well, but if it was a township road.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, in my experience back when I was a township officer, we had roads that were shared. Oakport Township had roads that were shared with Moorhead Township. And basically what it was, we had half the road and they had half the road, but in terms of maintenance, that was a nightmare. So what we typically do is we'd sign agreements where if there's a 3-mile stretch, we'd take the full 1.5-mile stretch, and the other township would take a 1.5-mile stretch, and you do it that way. But because you're putting this culvert under a road that's basically shared by both, that's a different deal, and you would certainly think that should be a split cost between the two townships.
Well, I felt that way too, but
Yeah.
it's not working out that way, and I don't know. Let's see, Thursday, July 24th, family health care. We updated quality assurance programs. They identified items that need to be worked on as far as quality assurance, and gave a financial report. And the CEO gave a report on grant applications. Also on Thursday, I went to the Lakes and Prairie meeting. There, Dr. Ross gave they did a real good survey on needs concerning housing and health needs for Clay and Wilkin County, and different things that came up that were discussed, It's very, very interesting survey. Let's see, Monday, I went to the Arts Agassiz Recreation Trails meeting on Monday, July 28th. They were discussed the procedure to dissolve. Chuck Whiting, the Polk County Administrator, gave us a good plan of action, how to plan to dissolve that joint powers agreement. The Trail Administration Board Chairman and Secretary Treasurer are all absent, so there was limited business transacted during that thing because most of the main members are missing. Let's see, Wednesday, July 30th. I attended the U.S. Department of Agriculture where they went over soil conservation programs or land conservation programs, where they were deciding which program should be pursued by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. On Thursday, July 31st, I went to Randy Nelson from the University of Minnesota held a thing on hydrangea, on plants south of Dilworth there. He gave a good presentation how to grow plants and stuff like that. Fairly well attended, and it was a good presentation by Randy. Also on July 31st, I went to Flowing Township. They discussed upcoming collections, procedures, signage. They're also buying a fire truck, and they were talking about the assessment that's going to be going out to all the townships surrounding, served by the Felden Township. Friday, August 1st, I went to Partnership for Health, where we discussed this new Partnership for Health that will be starting January 1st. We elected officers, discussed grant applications, and plans to move forward with the joint powers agreement. That was my meetings.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Grant.
Let's see, I think I just had Oakport Joint Powers Board meeting, and we discussed hunting issues. Chief Ebinger from the City of Moorhead, the police chief from the City of Moorhead was there, and we didn't really get things completely resolved. There's a lot of issues to be discussed, and there'll be more discussions in the future, and the final decision is up to the City Council of Moorhead. So, and then I did go to the Maple River Aqueduct model in Rosemount, Minnesota for the diversion project, and let's see, Mayor Williams from the City of Moorhead was there, and Council Member Hewlett, and we got a tour of the model. It was extremely interesting. Pretty amazing what they've done with this thing. I'm sure it took a long time to put it together, and a lot of engineers have been involved, and it allows them to actually operate a portion of the diversion and see what impacts it'll have. And so, as they explained, the reason for the model, and I think the model was, fairly expensive to build, but in the long run, when they start building the diversion project, it'll have some money-saving consequences because it allows them to see what works, what doesn't work, and how things are impacted. So that was it for me.
And you could go back 2 weeks now, Frank?
That was, yeah.
Okay, right. John?
Okay, we see on the 24th, we had a solid waste advisory committee meeting, and dealt with a number of reports about the possible relocation of a transfer station and the possibility of a MRF there. That was the interesting discussion we had. I'd met the night before, or the evening before, with one of the companies that is going to be bidding on the plan or the study, and they should be some interesting reports when we get those done. Later that day, I had to skip a meeting of the Lakes and Prairies Community Action because we had a wellhead protection meeting in Barnesville, and they're doing their report. That's every 10 years, I think they have to do a wellhead protection study, and they're in the midst of that study to determine whether or not everything's safe for the water supply for the city. And it's interesting, they have improved considerably since the last 10-year study the testing ability. So they the area that they considered a wellhead for wellhead protection that was much smaller than what it was 10 years ago, because they know much more accurately what's there, and they could and where the water comes from. So they were able to decrease the number of acres that are included in it. Let me see. Last week I went to Crookston for a extension meeting on Wednesday and Thursday, and attended on Thursday the conference put on by Extension called Thriving by Design, and the Department of Design at the university and others are advocating about how we can be much more efficient in our planning if we do careful design of these structures of government and so on beforehand. So it was a very interesting workshop. Attended the Barnesville Community Picnic on Thursday night last week, and that was well attended, and it's a good event for the community. There's a lot of excitement about the city, and a lot of fun for everybody. That's it.
Okay, I am going to have to wait with mine because my calendar book is downstairs, and I'll get it during the break. But John, do you want to, just for the public watching, do you want to explain a little bit about the MRF? When you mentioned MRF, some people might not know what that is.
Well, it seems like the trend in the state and nation actually is to have single stream garbage or recycling connections. So in other words, you can put all the recyclables into one category, and then you have a facility where they do the separation and so on. And it's supposed to increase, at least traditionally, it's increased considerably the usage and the number of people who do recycling over what we currently do, and where we have to separate the plastics from the glass and so on. Now, for some of us who've been used to the old way, it's fun. This last year, of course, in Clay County, we were able to put all the plastic together. At home, I was still finding myself separating the ones and twos and all that stuff. But it's found that in studies that there are many more people that participate if they do it, if they combine it all together and don't have to separate at home. So that's the idea of having a facility like that. We're just entering the study phase to find out whether it would be cost effective for us and how to go about that. And if so, we would put it, if we do it, we'd put it next to or adjacent to the transfer station, which we're working on with the city of Moorhead. And hopefully then this all will enhance our ability to make positive use of the Bruner and Perm, which we know are partners with. So by making the transportation of garbage there and fines back more efficient and so on. So
yeah, I think I think that's exactly right. I think it allows us to sort items that can be recycled. It then allows us to sort things of what needs to go to our landfill and things that can go to Perm for incineration, which ultimately all of it ends up increasing the life of our landfills, which is a good thing. So thank you, John.
Yep.
Brian, do you want to give your report now?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess we did have a little break there, but worked on a lot of personnel issues. I guess we're going through that rating system, and there's been some appeals in regards to where people are rated and different things, so that takes up quite a bit of time. I did attend a technical day in Minneapolis, and one thing that we had a presentation from MCIT, which was really an interesting update, but we also had an extended presentation from PERA, and there is a, I don't want to say a law change, but there is a change coming down the pike, and you will hear more about this because it was really at the discussion stage, and we had a lengthy discussion on it, and it's in regards to correction officers and them being able to pay just into PERA or to pay into PERA and the Social Security system both jointly, and they really need to make a decision and move forward on this. And while it is quite a big deal, if it ends up, it's going to possibly cost the county more, probably cost the employee more, but you know, it's a big issue of whether they want to be in or out of Social Security. So we'll discuss that, and you guys will be in on the discussion too. AMC was looking at coordinating this. They realized that it was too controversial, not too controversial, but it was controversial, and this is a PRA issue. So that took up a lot of the time on it. Had some meetings, a meeting with a individual referenced township roads, and Dave's helping me out on that. He returned a call yesterday in regards to that. We did a lot of work on the budget. We've met with several of the agencies, and we'll continue to meet with agencies. We met with Highway and Social Security, Family Service Center, Maintenance, and we'll continue to meet with them. I attended that solid waste meeting as well. And I had an evaluation for Kirk yesterday too. He's already been here 6 months, and we talked about all of the different things that have been launched now and really, frankly, even completed. But we haven't talked a great deal about it. You guys went ahead and approved involvement with that burner and perm, and we talked about yesterday's evaluation, how big of a deal that is. I mean, they convert garbage to energy, and it's really what we need to do in the future. And now when you start looking, we've kind of flattened out on recycling, and this MRF is going to really expand, and it's proven to expand the amount of products that are recycled. They're also looking at venturing into something with Morehead State and Concordia College on reusing their organic material that is thrown out, and they're really excited about that. So there's a lot of things being done in solid waste right now, and you guys, I know, are members on that board, and you guys have been really pushing hard on that, and it's coming to fruition on it, so thank you.
It's hard to talk trash in public, though.
There you go. I know, it's a lot of money, but
Right, that one.
All right, okay, I digressed. Okay, we finished, Brian?
yes.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on, and I'll give my report after a break when I have a chance to run down to my vehicle and get my book. So we'll go to the 9 o'clock bid opening. Engineer Dave Overbowl.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Dave, whenever you're ready.
All right, well, we have got a bid opening here for our 2014 bridge replacement projects. There's 6 of them. There's 4 of them on the township system and 2 on the county system. So looks like we've got a pretty good pack of bidders there. It's a little later in the season, but I think it's going to actually fit nicely with the construction that's currently going on in and around Clay County. The engineer's estimate is about $1,148,000 for the combined total of all 6. The way we anticipate this working is we'd open bids today, tentatively approve based on no errors. If there is, we'd bring them back. Then, the contractor's got to get the pipe ordered, probably take a month or so to get the pipe here, so probably looking at mid to later September for construction. And I think 5 of them will be relatively straightforward projects. 1 of them is going to be a little more involved. There's a lot more dirt, so.
Okay. All right.
We'll go to open.
Will they all be complete this fall?
Yes.
All right. Provided the bids are...
Yeah, we don't have any other hang-ups or delays. All right. Our first bidder is Riley Brothers Construction from Morris, Minnesota. They do have their bid bond here in the amount of 5%. Grand total for all 6 for Riley Brothers is $973,470.00. $973,470.00. Okay, yeah, they did, we did have 2 addendums on here too, Nathan mentioned here, and they did acknowledge both addendum 1 and addendum number 2. right. Our next brother is Saline Brothers out of Holly. They do have bid bond amount of 5% here. They also have acknowledged addendum number 1 and number 2. Grand total bid for Saline Brothers is $1,202,738.00. $1,202,738.00. Our next bidder is Central Specialties out of Alexandria. They've got a bid bond here in the amount of 5%. And it looks like they've only, oh, yep, there it is. Yep, they have acknowledged addendum 1 and number 2, so they got both those in order. Grand total for Central Specialties is $1,310,728.36. $1,310,728.36. All right, our next bidder is R.L. Larson Excavating Incorporated from St. Cloud, Minnesota. He's got a bid bond here in the amount of 5%. Addendum number 1 and number 2 are acknowledged. Grand total bid for R.L. Larson is $1,188,325.00. $1,188,325.00. All right, our next bidder is Midwest Contracting from Marshall, Minnesota. They're currently working on our grading jobs in Clay County. They've got a 5% bid bond here in their packet. They've acknowledged addendum 1 and number 2. Grand total bid for Midwest Contracting is $943,275.00. $943,275.00. All right, our last bidder is Gladen Construction from LaPorte, Minnesota. They've got a bid bond here in the amount of 5%. Addendum number 1 and number 2 have been acknowledged. And grand total bid for Gladen Construction is $841,416.00. $841,416.00. It looks like some pretty competitive bids. At this time, could we maybe conditionally approve the Gladen Construction bid? It appears to be our low bid at this time. We would run through the numbers, make sure there's no errors.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second, but I do want some discussion on one of them, I guess.
Okay, all right, it's open for discussion.
I mean, I don't know if it's the right time to bring it up or not, but the one up in Hewlin Township that we're bidding on, I don't know, probably it's something I should have looked at a long time ago, but I know Mr. Erickson, who's present today, also expressed some concern. I mean, I think that's around a 500, how much, do we have that
Take a look
itemized at all as far as from one of them, how much that project is costing us?
We got the engineer's estimate handy. I think our engineer's estimate was,
The as-bid, you want that number?
yeah, Our estimate was about 519.
And they bid it at $336,684.
Yeah, so the actual bid is about 336,000 for that one.
And I realize the watershed, is the Wild Rice Watershed Board paying for some of this, or is that all, that's all ours, huh?
Correct, it's all township bridge funds, and then $20,000, 10,000 capped for engineering for the township, and then 10,000 capped for the dirt work and non-participating bridge items, which would be dirt and culverts, like smaller culverts.
I guess I went up there and looked at that project, and I was just looking at the benefit of, that's a big project for $336,000, you know, or I guess we estimate 519,000, you know. We're gonna put in a lot of dirt, it's gonna benefit one farmer there, which is good, but I mean, yes, have another way out. Not that it shouldn't be done, but we should probably look at a different way when we look at all this flood protection and stuff like that, you know. We're not gonna slow down the water, in fact, we may even speed the water up some more, cause more erosion down, and I don't know if that's all. More than likely, the Wild Rice Board has already looked at that.
Well, I think we have to run hydraulics too, is that correct, Nathan? There is rules on how much, you know, how much stage increase you can have. And I believe once the water overtops what's currently there, it is kind of free flowing, like you and I talked a little bit. It's more like it's like a shallow weir. There's 3 36-inch pipes in there now with a big concrete kind of a weir. So as you come down this real steep embankment, the water can go right over the top of that weir, and then you've got no restrictions. But right now, we've got, I believe, 100% of the water going through the new culverts.
That's correct.
The embankment's been raised about 13 feet. So I think, based on the different conditions.
So it's been raised so it can't overflow the top?
Partially that, and partially it's just so steep. In order to make the 30-mile-an-hour design speed, which is a minimum design speed, it had to be raised up that much.
It's like a Texas swale.
It is a Texas crossing today. Yep.
But it will not be when you're done.
Correct, it will not be when we're done. It's a pretty big project, it's going to function quite differently than it does now, based on the fact that it won't go over the top, but with 3 36-inch culverts and beavers and debris and things, those pipes are getting clogged with lumber. There's issues with at least one, if not two of them, having some functional, you know, just based on the age of those pipes, or I think a couple of them are undermining, and the locals were worried about the condition of the crossing and the safety, I guess, with the amount of water that goes through there.
2 of them are virtually crushed right now. I mean, not very much water can pass through them. So one functions in its intended manner. So,
I guess my concern was, as long as we're spending that much money, should we be looking at holding the water back a little bit so there isn't as much erosion going down, because we're not going to slow the water up any with this project, are we? In fact,
I would say it's probably going to be real similar to what it is today. When it's said and done, the hydraulics will be real similar. And, you know, you and I talked earlier a little bit too, and I think the highway department would be more than happy to work with watersheds. We minimally worked with the Buffalo Red on an impoundment they had down there kind of north of Barnesville, but if there was a project or any way that we could partner with the Wild Rice Watershed, I think we'd be happy to do so. And Brian had asked that I could talk to Mr. Erickson as well as the Wild Rice Watershed District, which I did. And the answer that I got back from them was that they've got different priorities on their projects, and based on the benefit of this small one in particular, it just didn't have the benefit, and it wouldn't really make their priority list. And
So this is the one where it didn't meet that threshold?
Yep.
Where they get it?
Yep, I think they like to have 3 to 4 inches of storage of a runoff event, and this is 0.18 of an inch. So it just, it sounded like, and I don't know a lot about these impoundments. We really don't do a lot with them, but it sounded like in order to be effective, you'd have to have 5 of them or so this same size to work together. And it does sound like a great idea, and it looks good on paper when you can see the impoundment, but if the watershed wasn't going to move forward on it and push it, I didn't really know how we could as a...
Did the project itself require a permit from the watershed?
It did.
And that was granted?
Correct.
I don't know if it's appropriate or not. I don't know, Mr. Erickson, if he wants to talk about it, and allow him to talk on that part.
We can certainly allow him to talk if he wants to talk. Do you want to talk, Mr. Erickson?
I appreciate the time you spent thinking about this, and I'm just trying to open up a dialogue to be able to work together. I'm supposed to be wearing my farmer's cap today, but just if we could do things, or at least watch things in the future, just share and do some retention, that's where it's at, from my opinion. I respect whatever decision you make today, and I really appreciate Commissioner Gross in taking the time and talking about it, so bringing it to where it's really was more. I thank you
Right. Well, we do have a motion on the table, and it's been seconded. Any further discussion, Frank?
No,
I appreciate your comments, too, and
well, I think it's important, we're going to spend that type of money, should we be looking at water retention also at the same time, And it looks like at $336,000, that's almost going to be the majority of the 6 projects, that's going to be one of the main ones in it. If you go up there, there's going to be a lot of dirt moved in there. And it just, as long as we're doing that, I thought. But I also respect the Wild Rice Watershed Board, they've approved the thing. We've approved the thing and looked at it, I guess, and we got to say that everything's kosher here, It's just, like Mr. Erickson also stated, I don't know, just looking at it a little bit closer.
Well noted. Okay. With no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. I want to thank all you people for coming and bidding on our projects. We appreciate having you. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some awfully competitive bids there. Wow.
What was our estimate of that whole project?
$1,148,000.
Was our estimate?
Okay, we got the budget discussions going to start now. And Brian, are you ready, or should we take a break before this or after this?
Sure, whatever.
We can keep on with it.
Okay. We're going to start with the highway, so he's ready to go.
All right, he's here and ready.
It's in page 54 if you want to go to the big book. I think he's also got a summary. You do have that summary.
I've got some talking points.
Okay.
I did not make copies.
Okay, they have it on page 54.
I thought they would, I was hoping I was going to check on them. We had a truck hall meeting in Fulton this morning. It seemed like they're a little earlier this year. They're starting those American Crystal and the Grower truck hall meetings. We had one in Hitterdall last week. I wasn't able to make it. We've got Felton today, Glendon tomorrow, and Sabin on Thursday.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah, they're talking the same kind of a deal, pre-haul starting like the 25th of August, possibly the September 2nd. And then
There's not much for beats out there yet.
yeah, October 1st again for
I thought
the,
it'd be later this year.
that's what I was thinking as well.
So, Brian, before we get started in this, just help me out a little bit here. We've got the main budget document that, obviously, that Lori's put together based with the input of all the departments. And then we have the sheet with the new requests.
Yes.
And then we have the 2000 departmental goals and objectives. So when we look at the highway department's budget, should we also be looking at the goals and objectives together with it? And can you tell us where that would be on what page?
I didn't set them up. Dave hasn't submitted those yet, but he will.
Okay, so you do have goals, but you're just not sharing.
Yep.
It's page 54 of the budget document, and we did talk about that yesterday. He said he'd bring his goals.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I just thought of last night.
I just thought if we're talking about them, it's nice to compare what you have here and what your goals are, but we'll save that for another day. All right, Dave, go ahead.
Okay, I put together just some budget talking points, I guess. I think most everyone's familiar, our number one main objective, number one and number two, I guess, is maintenance or construction. So our number one objective is to provide routine maintenance for county and township roads. Our township maintenance contract alone brings in about $600,000 of revenue from the townships. And that is shown on our first page of our budget. It's shown, and I'm not sure if you got the most current one, as we did recently get one of our 30 townships come back to us. Cromwell Township decided to come back starting July 1. So that's an additional $25,000 of revenue from them.
Our report is dated 7/15.
Yeah, that's probably, as of just yesterday, we kind of added that one in. So on the very top there, underneath revenue, underneath the maintenance side, I think it's 10-310-5409 is where it shows townships and cities. For proposed 2015 budgeting is $572,000, but that'll actually be real close to $600,000. So that's one of our main chunks of our revenue that helps pay for the labor, the fuel, the equipment, and all that, so that's...
Do you want to have Ann come up? Ann, do you want to come up? I mean, you spent a lot of work on this. You might as well come up in case there's questions. You might as well get some of the credit for the work that goes on here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right.
So on the maintenance side, like I said, that is one of the main revenue sources, as well as the other thing would be our gas tax dollars. So the top three line items there shows town road, municipal maintenance revenue, and regular maintenance revenue. Those are the dollars. The town road, that's gas tax dollars that comes through the county to the townships. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's based on the state formula.
Correct, yeah. And then it's about $500,000 that we directly share with them, and that's how they operate. We've got municipal maintenance revenue that comes from the gas.
And that gas tax revenue is stale too, right? We don't see a lot of increases from year to year.
Not very much at all. I would say it's probably going the other direction.
So it goes down, but the cost of repairing our roads goes up, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
I guess it has been
Painting a
going...
picture here.
Yeah, it has been going up a little bit, but when I started in 2001, we got $2.2 million for construction. Well, then it went down to $2 million and 1.9, and I think it finally started coming back just a few years ago. So for about 5-6 years, we went backwards in our construction revenues anyway.
So the amount of money that we get to build roads went down.
Yep, and the cost
And
jumped.
the cost
That's when
went up.
asphalt skyrocketed, the price of the oil and the asphalt.
What's our solution? Turn everything back to gravel?
Well, that's what a lot of people talked about for a while, and you don't hear a lot about that anymore.
I
but-
don't think a lot of people want that.
No, I think that's where these wheelage tax and the sales tax and these other options are kind of coming from. So our gas tax revenues are shown at the top, as well as our county township contract dollars. Most things with the highway department budget are smaller items. It's small things like it's training and it's equipment and things, and there's probably about 5 or 6 items that are kind of noteworthy, and that's usually in the past what I've kind of talked about a little bit. Those are where the big dollars are at. There's 4 segments in our budget. There's maintenance, there's construction, there's administration, and then there's shop. So on the first page here that we're going through on the maintenance side, right down towards the bottom, about 5 or 6 from the bottom, is where you see road materials, and that is probably that's the single biggest line item that we've got. And as of yesterday, Brian and Lori and Ann and I sat down and we kind of went through our budget a little bit, and we did the cost of annual gravel and maintenance has been going up. And a lot of it is just the hauling cost to get it out to our roadways. So we put a little. We've been held at $850,000 for 2013 and 14, and then our request for 15 prior to yesterday was $900,000. But I think we could scale that back a little bit, trying to keep the budgets down. So at this point, we do have a request of $875,000 in our road materials line item.
Does that include the sand and salt too for winter maintenance?
Yeah.
That's all part of that same.
Yeah.
So it's the gravel for summer maintenance, and then it's also the sand and salt for winter.
And then like patching is another real big one. When we have
That's
asphalt
all in
patching, and it's all the materials that our maintenance guys use to put on the roads. That wouldn't be a contracted thing like what we opened today. It would be in addition to any contract work. It's
Do we buy the sand and salt together with the state? Do you share that?
As of right now, we were kind of doing it separately, but once we run out of quantity, then we are going to do it that way. It's a lot easier for tracking purposes.
Okay.
But I believe that's the road that we're going down.
Right.
What about the roadway maintenance costs and the road materials? Is the maintenance cost just equipment? or-
The maintenance cost is labor, I guess. That's the
It's
easiest.
labor.
Yep, kind of
But
contract.
wouldn't that
labor.
come under salaries up on top?
Well, it's
It's
not.
contractor labor, it's outside
Oh,
labor.
contractor.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And we did hold that one at $250,000. That's been the same 13, 14, and proposed for 15 to stay the same. We try to do as much as we can. Once we purchased the backhoe a few years ago, we do a lot more of that type of work in-house. We've rented other equipment that we can do in-house as well. So that one there is I feel we can keep that one at $250,000 with 0 increase from last year.
I'm a little concerned when I see this on that line item because in 2012, we budgeted 225 and we spent 446. Was there an anomaly there that,
I think
was that a disaster issue?
That was the flood year, I believe.
Okay, and so did we get revenues back for part of that?
I believe we probably got, I don't know what exact percent, but.
Something from FEMA or something?
Yes, we haven't, I don't think we've actually received that yet, but we have a receivable.
Okay, so there's a claim out there still to collect that. And then in 2013, we budgeted 250 and we spent 291. So.
That one there, I know we kind of a little bit did that on purpose. If you look up a couple lines, you'll see the budget was 850 for materials and we spent 677.
Okay.
So I think we had an issue there, I don't exactly remember.
You
what it
robbed
was.
Peter to pay Paul.
We kind of did.
Okay.
We tried to balance that one out.
That's good, but that's okay to do that when if you recognize that you're good in one spot and high in another, that's a good way to do it.
Dave, I have one question on revenues. Where do you record the wheelage tax?
The village tax is going to be,
It's in 805.
yeah, is that on
The very last page.
Oh,
So we'll get to that.
oh, okay.
So that's where we show the village tax revenue, is that right?
Yep, the wheelie checks revenue shows in 805, and then the expense
Is shown on the construction
yep.
side?
in 320
On
in
our
construction.
page.
Okay, so we can look at that
Okay.
in a couple minutes then.
Yep.
All right, okay.
So I guess that's the main things to talk about a little bit along the maintenance side. Culverts, I guess, that's a little bit of a guess, and that is item 10-310-6504. That is one line down from road materials. We had 27,000 in there last year. 13, we had 25,000, and 2012, we had 25,000. Those are, you just have to kind of guess how those culverts are going to fall apart. If you got a lot of spring runoff, some joints will pull apart, and you'll just start seeing little holes in the road and things. I did bump that one up a little bit based on historical expenditure. I think our 2013 actual was 30,000. As we've been just seeing more and more pipes, I guess, going to fall apart. And so I raised that one up $3,000 to try to keep up with the trend.
Okay. Laurie, do we have the new health insurance rates plugged in now?
Yeah.
They're on here, part of this? Thank you.
They're
Okay.
not, they're actually not part of the road and bridge budget, they're all plugged into the revenue fund, but they're part of the overall levy, so.
But,
They're not in here.
They're not in the road and bridge budget. They're
so
just-
where it has health insurance on here, there's a line item for health insurance.
Right, that's at the old rate.
That's at the old rate, okay. Okay, thank you.
So also, how much did health insurance go up our rates?
13%.
13?
Isn't that what it was, Brian?
Yes.
I just talked to another county, theirs went up over 30%, so.
I think ours is still too high.
Okay.
That's for another day.
Sorry if I interrupted.
Not a problem, Frank. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so like I said, I put that, the culvert line item up $3,000 to match up with 2013 expenditures. We kept our traffic supplies the same at $35,000 there. That's our sign replacement. According to the federal mandate a few years ago, all the signs had to maintain a certain amount of reflectivity. John and I were part of a township kind of a committee on that as well, that tried to help them with their signs. But this $35,000 is basically replacing a certain amount of signs every year. We do have a sign program we purchased so that we can query and can track and keep track of all the information on the signs, as well as all the posts. And if we need to buy any equipment, barricades and things in the past, we're sitting pretty good on some of that stuff, but nonetheless, we kept this line item the same.
Do the townships, can they get any of that money, or do the townships have to do their own signage?
Yeah, they gotta do their own. This is strictly for the county roads. The roadway maintenance costs, we kept that flat at $250,000. The weed and brush, I think I initially was looking at bumping that one up to $20,000 because there's just a lot of talks. I've been working with the Soil and Water Conservation District. They kind of manage our weed and brush control for us. And a few years back, I think we had gotten some grant money, so we put our budget down to zero for that 1 year, and then we've been slowly climbing it back up. So it used to be around 20,000, then it went down to zero for a couple of years, and then we started back in 2012 at 10,000, and 13 at 14,000. So we've been kind of ratcheting up a little bit. there is a lot of spurge out there. In order to try to keep control of this stuff before it gets out of hand, I guess I've been trying to kind of bring that up, but prior to yesterday, I did have a request of $20,000, but I think it might be more in line with just going a $2,000 increase on that, so that's where it sits at $18,000 as of today.
Okay. The intergovernmental payments, are those the payments that we pay to the cities for the work that they do for our roads within their jurisdictions?
Correct, as well
Our
as
contracts?
that loan that we had, I think, on 40th Avenue South, is that part of it as well, to the city of Moorhead? I think there's
Yes,
kind
that's
of
in
a
there.
That's all, like, we have a contract, we have like 15 miles of county roads within the city of Moorhead, and we contract with them, right? And is that what that is?
Yep, that is in there. Our gravel tax distribution to the townships is in there.
Okay.
The town road distribution
Okay.
that shows as revenue up on top is in there as
Right.
well.
Okay, okay. All right. Good, thank you.
All right. We want to go to the next page, our construction page. On the top there, we've got our revenues for our construction projects. The first one showing $275,000 for bridge bonding. Now, that would be 5 different county projects that we're going to request bridge bond funds for. So hopefully they've got bond funds for us in 2015. Otherwise, those projects will have to be delayed. But we're looking at $275,000 of projects there. We've got a regular construction. Now, that's kind of a combination of our I think township bridges in there. We've got our state aid, gas tax, monies that we get from the state out of there. So we're looking at about 3.111 out of the state aid regular construction account. It's a little increase from the previous year, but we just got a little bit going on, a little more going on next year with our concrete paving. Miscellaneous revenues of $50,000. That's our engineering that we do for the townships. You know, we do that, we design their culverts for them, and then they're kind of capped at $10,000, so that's we're trying to capture that revenue. I think a couple of years ago we weren't doing that, so I think you kind of directed us to do that. So we've got 5 projects there, and they're capped at $10,000, so there's $50,000 there. And then the $5.3 million, that's our bonding money that's currently being saved for the year 2015, so that's the share of the bond that we took out for
Projects that are next year?
Yeah, the 2 paving projects on 18 and 52.
Good. Good. All right.
All right, if we keep going down, the very first line item on salaries of regular, we do have a little bit of a decrease there, and I believe a lot of that has to do with the part-time staff. We're assuming there's going to be a little bit less overtime on their end, so we show about $4,000 less of salaries, and that's kind of where the part-time, the part-time plus our regular salaries are showing. Our full-time employees' overtime is showing 2 lines down. We're at about $44,000, just about $50,000 there. We're expecting a little more overtime on our own end there, so that one did actually go up a little bit, but we're going to have a lot of paving next year, so it's going to be pretty busy, along with culverts, and we're going to have a bridge as well. So we're just trying to accurately capture what we think is going to happen for that. The next few items are health insurance, payer, and social security, and Ann just kind of takes care of that, her and Lori. Printing and publishing, we lowered that one down a little bit. I think that one actually, is that the one that we had a little higher there too? I think we might have, I guess I tweaked my sheet yesterday, so I'm not sure if we're looking at the exact same thing, but we actually lowered that one down to $3,000, down
Dave, I
1,000.
think that was under the administration.
That was an admin one? Okay.
That would be the next page.
All right, so we took a look at historical expenditures and lowered that one a little bit. Appraisals, we're not going to do any grading work next year, so I don't need to have any appraisals, so we brought that one down, $12,000. Other professional services, we brought that one up to kind of match a little bit of what we're seeing there. Is that some of the ACS stuff that we have here?
It's for your engineering programs, your
Okay.
yearly service fees
Sure.
for the computer programs.
Our engineering, our technical service, we did raise that one up a little bit. We lowered it in 2014. We didn't have a bridge design. In 2015, we're going to have bridge design plus a lot of MnDOT expenses, testing and things like that for all the concrete that we're going to have. We're going to have a lot of construction, so we kind of brought that one up to where we feel what we're going to see. So that bumped it up about $12,000 from 2013. Other than that, most things are staying about the same. If you go down to 10-320-6566, it's about 7 from the bottom or so. That's where we've got our right-of-way costs. There again, we'll have very minimal right-of-way from this current year, so that's a decrease of $152,000 that we won't need to purchase. Big cost on that was along Highway 18 there, 5.5 miles of very expensive right-of-way.
So is there going to be, when does 95 get started? Because that's going to...
Yeah, I think that's going to be in like
16?
16 or 17, somewhere's in there.
And that'll probably need right-of-way
Yep,
issues as well.
for sure. So that'll be another little spike in our right-of-way costs in that given year.
Okay.
I want to go back up to training again. What type of training do we do? I mean, as I've been going to township meetings, I'm hearing concerns about the grading not being proper. Is that part of our training, or is this?
It is, yeah. The guys have MnDOT certifications that they have to go to, and they used to be an annual deal. Now they're every other year. But between grading and base, bituminous, concrete, they've got quite a few. I think there's even erosion control training. But they're, part of that engineering technician position requires certifications. So I guess we keep up on it all we're required to in order to properly. And when we get audited, we have to prove that our guys have been to this training and they maintain the right certs. So. Down at the bottom there, you can kind of see where that wheelage tax, this is the wheelage tax expenditure, where it's being shown, 10-320-6630. That's the city projects or the city share of that wheelage tax, is that right?
Yep.
And then that's $139,200. That's based on that 70-30 formula.
So of the total wheelage tax collected,
Yep.
we are sending out roughly $140,000 to the cities to use to repair their roads.
Correct. And I don't know for sure if it'll all get requested or not, but I believe we need to show it down there for budgeting purposes.
If it's not requested, it stays in there, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it stays in our
Well,
account.
it stays dedicated to each community.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So,
Where's the income for it? Where's the?
yeah,
Is that on the 805?
Yep, that's
on
an
page
805.
4.
on the next page.
Yep, the last page, yep.
Okay. So that's a separate budget than this one, is it, or is this all together?
I think the revenue is shown on page 4, underneath that 805 number.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if,
We don't even have it.
Oh.
because we have our highway construction budget here, and it ends on page 55, doesn't it?
Goes into highway administration next,
Yeah, but
next page.
but they kind of budget by department,
Well,
don't they?
that's it. I would think that the income for wheelage tax would be in the same,
That's what I'm getting at, that's what I'm trying to get at.
It's a tax though, and all of our taxes go in 805.
Oh, okay, so that's just
okay.
an accounting thing you got going on.
That's right.
Okay, now I read you. All right. All right, so we'll get to that. Yeah, 140,000, and that then is broken down
Yeah,
based
thanks.
on the formulas that.
Yeah, 70,000 goes to Moorhead, and then 4 communities get 10,000, and then I think there's another
Yeah.
few that get 5,000. I think there's 6. 6 of them get 5,000, so they get 30. So it's 30, 40, and 70. It adds up to 140.
Okay.
The next line item down is our county construction. That's our levies, our $350,000 levy for county roadway construction. It's either spent on a grading or paving job on a county road, or it's also the non-participating bridge items for the box culvert jobs. It pays for the non-participating shares. The next line down is our county wheelage tax. So that shows our share of the $446,000 kind of estimate that we had. And I actually think that estimate's probably a little conservative. I think we're actually taking in a little more than that, but.
So that $324,800 just simply goes to improve our roads?
Yep, and you know, and that was a large chunk of how we planned to afford County Road 95 that you had mentioned. That was going to help us.
Well, for this go-around, the money.
Yeah. Yep. You know, after 3 years of that, we'll have $1 million in that account that we can actually do something with. The 300,000, you can't grade miles and miles of road with that, but 3 years worth, yeah, you can get something done now.
So without that money, could we have done these projects?
No, not 95. No. Well, that was, you know, I remember the 5-year plan that we did. I had that thing stretched out over about 5 or 6 years, and I kept thinking about the people living up there, construction for 5 years in a row, and then there were some gaps in the middle, so we're going to do a job, take a year off, come back and do a little more. Yeah, it was going to be very unpopular.
Well, I think fixing roads is an important thing, so.
Yeah. All right, I think that's all I had on the construction side. The page 3 is our administration. There's really not a lot of big line items there. Maybe a couple of items I guess maybe I should talk a little bit about. On the revenue side, I guess, is where we show our permitting. The permitting has been very, very busy. We've got the online tracking software that kind of helps with that. We've got moving permits. We've got utility permits. We've also got entrance or access permits. We don't sell a lot of those, but they're getting to be more popular as people either change an access or buy a parcel of land and need an entrance or something.
Dave, at some point in this, in the revenue that's generated from these moving permits, I'd like to see that as an item on our highway tracking agenda again. What I'm interested in seeing is how the revenues are being collected versus the cost. To be honest with you, I've heard from a few in that business that think this is overpriced for this permitting, and I think we need to redo it.
Okay,
so
that sounds fair.
So if you can, you set the agendas for the highway tracking meeting, I'd like to see you, or I would encourage you to get that on an agenda.
All right, so we budgeted the same amount for 14 as we did for 15 as far as the permits. That also includes the permits from Trans Systems. They buy a 6- and 7-axle permit from us, as they do from the state in Polk County and Marshall County. That's about $10,000 right there. But anyway, that's the revenue for the permits. Miscellaneous revenue of $30,000. Do you remember what?
That is for the joint facility.
That's
like
right.
Their share of the building insurance and the administrative.
Oh, okay.
fee.
Okay. So are we the fiscal host of all that stuff then, and then they pay us?
Yes.
Okay. All right, going down to regular salaries, 10,336,105. There is a little increase there. It shows about $11,000, and a large portion of that has to do with a few years back, we did, if you look in the next line down, over in the year 2012, you see $4,500 there. That was something that BJ worked with me on once. We had one of our 2 office staff left us probably about 6 years ago, and then we were vacant for a few years, and we were just kind of struggling out there. It's really hard to run our joint facility, highway department, with only 1 staff, because there's vacation needs, there's sick leave needs, and even simple as the lunch hour. You know, this person never even took a lunch hour for probably 25 years. So now we've got some changing going on over there, and we did put a little budget in. Well, $4,500, I think at $13 an hour gets you anywhere from a month to 6 weeks. So what we did is we got someone on board here now for the fall, and what I'd like to do is I was hoping to increase that one to, maybe 8-9 months, maybe even as much as 1,000 hours a year.
Did that fall under the new request then, or?
No, it didn't, Mr. Chair, because it was an expansion of the variable hour employees.
Oh, okay, so it's just a, okay.
It would, though, if he's asking for a half-time position, then it should be under the new request.
Right. So that may have to switch to a new request,
Yeah,
Dave,
so-
if that's what you...
Sure. So that was kind of the, I guess I would like to, the situation we're in right now is we've got Our current office manager has been there just about a year. September 3rd, I think she'll be there a year. The administrative assistant, the variable roster employee we have currently in there now, is really good, and it's definitely making some headway. That was the whole thing that I wanted to do before I come to the board, is try it a little bit, see how it works, and see, are we getting the desired effect that we want, and we definitely are. This fall's going to get busy with harvest. We're going to have a lot of farmers coming in, and it'll help just with 2 people between answering the phones, selling these permits, and actually getting work done. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I've been very pleased when I've called, for you, the response I've gotten from the person answering the phone.
Sure. They're very good.
She knows where you're at, she knows what's going on, when I can reach you, all kinds
Yep.
of.
And she relays the messages, and I get them, if I'm out of the office, I get them on my email and my phone, and it's very efficient, and we're going to get a lot more done. I just didn't want to come to the end of September or October, and I know it's going to be a tough time to go back to just one person. So, okay. And the other, I guess, little increase is down in travel and expenses, and that's 10,330, 6630, or 6331. Last year we had 5,500 in there. Now this year, I guess I'd like to propose a little additional money in there. Nathan and I went to the national conference last year. He went the year before when it was in Iowa, and I stayed back for the flood. And then the year before that was in Minneapolis, and we both went. And I guess I think these national conferences are beneficial. There's an awful lot to learn about what we're doing in Minnesota versus the other parts of the country, getting a handle on the legislative issues. There's just a lot of different things that I think is a good benefit. Some of the current budget that we had in this line item in particular probably helped when I went to Washington, D.C. Last month, I guess, or a few weeks ago for that visit with the legislature and working with our lobbyists. So
That was on the Tiger.
correct, yeah, that was on our Tiger application. So you'll see a $2,000 increase there, and I guess that was my thinking behind that, is it'd be nice to go to this conference, I guess, in 2015. Other than that, I think most things have been pretty much stayed about the same. Building liability and workers' comp, some of those things, I guess Ann kind of helps me out with, so I think we kind of look at a trend on that a little bit. Is that how we budget for those two?
It's 5%.
5%.
Okay.
5% on
5%
that.
of this is actual.
Sure. All right. The next and final page, I guess, other than I guess the 4th page is our shop page. We don't show any revenue at the top of the shop page. Most things are kept pretty much in line. Looks like we had a little increase there for the utilities, more public service, pretty much based on last year's actual being 61,000, so we thought we should move that up to 60, so you see a 5,000 increase there. Our equipment and repair, we've been trying to hold that one between 200 and 210,000. We'd like to skinny that, or shimmy that up a little bit, 5,000 more to 215. Last year's actual was 228, so we're forecasting a lot of what that is more than likely it's cutting edges and it's repairs from a tough winter. We had a pretty tough, we didn't have a lot of snow last year, but the guys were out quite a bit. We had a lot of wind. For not having very much snow, that stuff sure blew in and got kind of problematic. I know down in John's area there is all kinds of trouble with the wind, but the more we're out plowing around, the more cutting edges, and that steel is unbelievably expensive. You got 11 blades and 11 trucks out there. There's a lot of cutting edges, so we just went up to 215. We didn't think we needed to go all the way to what we spent last year, and we're hoping to live within that budget line item. And fuel is another big item there. Last year we had budgeted, or this current year we had budgeted 410,000. Last 2013 budget was 390. We spent 492 in 2013. So it's really hard to keep a handle on that. There's good years and bad years, I guess. So we did move that one up from 410 up to 420. So we got a $10,000 increase on our fuel budget. We just thought we should probably plan for it, because it's looking like that's the way it's going. The cost of diesel fuel stayed just about $4 a gallon all year, so I don't see the price going down either. We had 3 line items that we lowered a little bit there. We took a look at how things have been trending, and small tools and supplies, we think we can lower that by $2,000. We took a look at the radio equipment. We got a lot of new equipment in our fleet that we shouldn't need a lot of radio equipment. We lowered that by $1,000. And equipment over 500, We've had that at 8,000. We've been kind of slowly lowering that again, but anyway, we lowered that down to $5,000 with a $3,000 decrease.
Lori, what's the threshold for having something purchased and go into the internal service fund?
$5,000.
5,000 is the low end?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
It used to be $3,000 when we started the fund, but we upped that to $5,000.
Okay, all right.
I guess the last page is the unallocated page.
So the equipment internal service fund by going up by 650, that had something to do with the, and I remember this discussion early on, that we would have to add to that, and that had to do with additional vehicles or something, wasn't it? Do you recall what that was, Brian?
Yes, if I remember right, Mr. Chair. They were some blades that you pulled behind, and, and I think some more equipment.
We added some equipment.
We added a couple walking roll packers this last year. We added the spray patcher and the crack filling machine. We added those two pieces as well.
Well, we've been behind and lower than what we should have been putting in there all along.
Right.
So we've been slowly building it up to where we should be.
Right.
So, I've just added 50,000 at this point.
Okay, but there was a reason for, I mean, part of that 50 went for some new equipment that was purchased.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, okay, continue on, David. No, that's it, huh?
That's it for the...
So, do we have kind of a recap of your department then, in terms of...
Mr. Chair, this was a late afternoon one, and there was about 3 or 4 adjustments, and frankly, we didn't do a recap on it for you today because we thought we'd let you go through some of these and see where you sit, and then we'll do a recap, and hopefully with your memory or notes or whatever, we can go back and do the adjustments that you folks want done to them.
Right now, they're sitting at a 2.44% increase.
Okay, thank you.
In the levy.
And that's kind of what I think we want to see in each department's what. In their particular case, they've got nothing right now in new requests. That one issue on labor could end up. We'll have to talk about that. That might have to switch to new requests. Dave.
Sure.
I think, Mr. Chair, that would be a good one for the highway committee. To discuss that, whether it should be added variable hours or if it should jump to a part-time position. So.
Right. John?
I'm not sure if this is supposed to be in this budget or if it goes to something else, but, years ago, we had this study on our gravel mine up on Felton Prairie, and it seems to me we need to meet again. It's been a long time since we've gotten a report on what's happening with the gravel supply, how if we have to expand and so on. And I suppose there's some cost involved with gathering that group together again. Is that something that comes under this department or central administration, or do you know what?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Everett, I do think that the Land Management Committee met and talked about the gravel resources, and I think Nathan did do some work on that in regards to, you did some testing to see what...
and that's not some of those other properties that we had. There was some testing done on those.
Yes.
It is this item John brings up is on our Highway Tracking Committee agenda for today.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about it then. Yeah.
Sure. I think the last thing that I'd like to bring up was on our talking points a little bit is something that Brian and I have been talking about for about a year or so is we really don't have any internal service fund dollars or reserve dollars for our outlying shops. Most of them were built in the 50s. They're not very economical in the winter months, and actually 2 of them for sure don't really meet our needs. They can't have a truck and a plow. They don't fit them anymore. The equipment's growing. The one in Rolog, the plow truck for the Rolog district is housed out of Barnesville, and up in Ulen, the plow truck is housed down in Hawley. So it would be nice to somehow try to figure some sort of almost an internal service fund program for the outlying shops. If we need to replace another shop, what would we do? Right now, we don't have money set aside. The Barnesville project, I think, was a little bit of an eye-opener in the fact of, it's something that we actually could do had we had funds, and it worked out really, really well. I think the shop down there completely meets our needs for many, many years, and it was a, unfortunate incident, but it was a kind of a nice project. So I just wanted to bring that point out.
Well, you know, I think those things need to go hand in hand with, you know, with our capital improvement plans. That's not something that should just be budgeted out of highway. We have you know, over the last number of years, we've established a capital improvement plan, and you know, we get some things done now. We just completed this last of our 5-year capital improvement plan projects.
Sure.
And, you know, so now you get those and you get those paid for, and then you move on and you have to start over again, and because obviously everybody knows that buildings deteriorate and things change and you need to deal with them. But you need to have a way to fund them, and you're right on that. But I think you should be presenting that to this capital improvement fund committee that we have established.
Okay.
And that's some of the things, Mr. Chair, that we had talked about. How do we include those into this? And that's why we thought it would be good to bring it to you guys, and that's a very good suggestion.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Aren't you glad you had her sit up here with you?
Absolutely.
All right. Kathy. McKay.
And Mr. Chair, on this, there's an additional page, a single page, that was added at the end of your budget document. If you want to go back to that, that's her figures, plus her goals and objectives. Second from the end in your packet, at about page 5, is your goals, and then I'm sure they have more handout information as well. So, page 5 from the end on your goals, if you want to go back.
Page 5 on this one?
No. On this document, the goals and objectives.
Oh, it's on page 5
You
there.
go to the back and then come forward about 5 pages.
Oh, okay.
They're not numbered. Public health, it's just,
You don't
right
have
before
to come
Southgate.
back by. Go to the end and come back by.
I did that.
Oh, all right. One more time.
There we go.
okay.
How are you? Is this,
Good again.
take one and pass it on?
No.
Did you get one of these?
Oh, I might.
Yes, I got it.
I'm,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, so then where are we on the main budget? You're giving us all these page numbers here.
They aren't on the main budget, they have that additional page in the back,
So
Mr. Chair.
we're not looking at this at all?
Not looking at
All
that.
right, I'll throw that away.
No, you're special, for public
We're
health.
special, so you can just look at what we handed to you. That will give you all the information you will need.
All right, you have our undivided attention.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We are just here to request an increase of 10%, so we should be,
Well, that's no problem.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
thank you for being
Okay.
so agreeable. Okay.
Now let's get serious.
If you look at the handouts we provided, it's probably the easiest to go through for our public health budget. And on our first page, we have really the revenue sources at the top, and then the expenses, so that's kind of a general overview. The top part, it shows the 2014 budget and the 2015 budget, and then the percentage of change. So you can see I'll go through some of the lines, stop me if you have questions, please. The federal, state, and other grants, we certainly have a lot of grants in our budget, so it gives the total amounts there. And
You're expecting them to go down.
you know, those fluctuate. Some will go down because we'll lose some of the grants, even at the end of this year. And then we'll continue to apply for more grants, so it may go down for a while, and then we may secure more funding throughout the year. That's a typical process for public health. So we anticipate right now, the unknowns, we don't have those incorporated in this budget. Our contracts, those are various contracts we have throughout our agency, and so those will be reduced a little bit. We have a contract with the school that they will now be providing their own early childhood screening, so we'll lose that contract that we provided. So some of those contracts fluctuate as well. The licensing, that's the environmental health license fees that we have through public health to provide inspections for food, pool, and lodging. And insurance, MA and Medicare, those are reimbursements. We bill insurance and Medicare and MA for every service that we can, so those are billed. And self-pay, that really reflects monies that we receive through Southeast for our detox. We have a contract with Southeast Human Services Center in North Dakota, and we receive revenue based on the number of clients that we serve from that area. And our miscellaneous revenue is fairly stable. So there isn't much of a change with the 2014 and 2015 budget, as you can see from the percentage of change. Total revenue went down just a little bit. But again, with our new grants, that may go up. Any questions on, we have a little more on the next page if you have some questions on specific areas. Expenditures, the salary expenses went down just a little bit. We're going to lose the community transformation grant this year, which is about $300,000 a year. So some of those expenses will be reduced. Travel and related expenses as well because of that lost funding. Rent, liability, workman's comp is the same or close to the same. Contractual expenses are reduced a little bit, again, because of the grant fund. Equipment expenses are fairly stable. Telephone, postage, supplies, that also is reduced because of the grant funding reduction, so we'll have some of those expenses that we can reduce as well. Vaccine expenses, those are all of our vaccines. That includes flu as well as any of the vaccines we provide for children and adults. Wilkin County money, our emergency preparedness coordinator will be covering Wilkin County, as has been the case, so some of that money stays in Clay County. It comes in as a community health board at Clay Wilkin Community Health Board. And then we've got the Barnesville ambulance listed there as well in their request. So our total expenses went down, so therefore you can see at the bottom the request of our interfund transfer is also down from 2014. So actually our request overall is down about 2% from last year.
Kathy, how does the, you're comparing it to the last year's budget, but how are we tracking this year? Are we pretty close to budget?
With actual.
The actual?
The actual, yeah, I do have the actual.
We are tracking pretty close to what our budget is.
Okay.
You know, it's really hard because our billing is usually 2 months delayed, so our revenue sources coming in doesn't really catch up until the end of the year.
Right, okay.
But you're anticipating it to kind of match fairly closely with what
Yes,
the budget is.
yes.
The Barnesville ambulance, is that based on anything, or we're just given so much each year?
Yeah, Clay County has always provided funding to support the ambulance services in the rural areas particularly, and that's been going on for, oh gosh, a lot of years, John.
I mean, what causes it to increase or decrease, or we just...
They put a request in.
They have a formula, they charge townships so much, and they, Wilkin County and Clay County both pay into that.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And this amount changes depending on what the board here approves.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys will approve.
And they put a request in, I believe Mr. Berg has a request from them for the amount that they're requesting for this next year.
I was just wondering if they use it a lot, or if they don't use it, does it go up or down? Or?
They did I don't know if they come every year and do a presentation on all their information, but they did last year where they presented, how many clients they serve and areas they go in, and they have a budget as well. So I don't know if they're anticipating coming to present that or not.
Okay, thank you.
But we have always just had it in our budget. It used to be under public health, but public health has no funds to support that. So it's really Clay County, but we still listed in our budget.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask a question here. We haven't met yet. We've got it scheduled, but Kathy, on this sheet that you're handed out with them, you're showing the interfund transfer of $753,000, and originally you sent in the information that they have on their summary sheet on about the third page of their packet, it's just a line item budget for public health, is 810,000. Was that revised?
Correct.
That is
Yes.
revised to 763, or 753 as of
That's
right
correct.
now, then, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's less than last year's.
It's less than last year,
812.
right.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
The next page gives just the 6 areas that our programs fall under, so it's just a little more detail in the 6 areas of public health, both revenue and expenses. Under the public health infrastructure is really where most of our contracts and our fees for our documentation system, et cetera, fall under that administration, assure adequate infrastructure. So you see, we actually have the 2013, 2014, and 2015 budget and the percentage of change from 2014 to 2015. The infectious disease, that's our immunization services, our flu clinics, any disease prevention and control efforts that we would need to provide. Our disaster and response, that's our emergency preparedness funding, that's grant funded, as well as our CRI funding, that's also a grant fund from the state. So that falls under the disaster preparedness and response for emergency preparedness. Our environmental health hazards, that really does include our any investigation that there would be foodborne illnesses, we would have to provide that, as well as our food pool and lodging program, that we have the delegated agreement, and Bruce and Kent work underneath that delegated agreement for public health. Healthy communities and healthy behaviors, that will include our alcohol, tobacco, and other drug grant that we have through the state. It's our juvenile detention center nurse contract, our family home visiting programs, our WIC, Women, Infant, and Children program, school contract, our statewide health improvement grant. So all of those fall under that category. So it's quite a large category of grants and contracts under healthy communities and healthy behaviors. And as you can see, the budgeted amount is a little bit less in that area. And then we have our quality of and accessibility of health services, and that really includes all of our adult health programs. There's a number of waiver programs that we provide case management services for, and also our child and teen checkup screening, our refugee health, and our detox fall under that quality and accessibility of health services. So that's the total amount of that in 2015, which is, again, you'll see a little reduction in that. And then the expenditures go along with that in each of those 6 areas. So we've been able to reduce some of those expenditures. In our detox program, going back to that, we do have a savings of $30,000 that when we worked some numbers with Southeast revenue, and then we have some jail hold revenue in there. So we've been able to reduce that contract for social services, $30,000 from what you have listed and what Brian has in there too. So that'll be a reduction that Ron's budget will have in social services. Our detox, the average census is about 6.2, and we may see that increase by the end of the year to about 7. We still aren't at a capacity of 10. There's many days we're up to 10 clients, and then there's days that we're down to 2, 3, or 4. But the average has been 6.2, so it has increased from 5.8 in previous years. So we're seeing an increase with the clients that we're serving from the North Dakota side. And then the third page actually shows a graph of really the funding sources. So you can see that, we do receive a lot of grants and contracts and third-party reimbursement. That's the bulk of our budget. And again, the tax subsidy is the percentage is close to the same from 2014 to 2015. So what our request is. But again, we apply for every potential grant that we possibly can apply for and secure for our department.
So the county funding request is going from 1.882 to 1.702. Am I reading that right? Based on the graph?
The 15%
to 15.68.
Yeah. The 2014 budgeted subsidy was 768. 15.10%, and the current request for 2015 is 753.
750, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I got
616.
these gray shades wrong here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sometimes they're kind of close. May have to put them in a bolder color, right? So that's, I mean, really a brief overview. There's, as far as some changes, with our environmental health services, our food, pool, and lodging program, the expansion that we are requesting is that Otter Tail will be part of our Clay Wilkin food, pool, and lodging program. They currently have the state providing that service, and they would like to do a local delegated agreement like we are doing in Clay and Wilkin. So we're working on that process with the state. Otter Tail did hire, they contracted with an individual to get all of the program updates. There's quite a bit of work that needs to be done for the state for program expansion. So they did contract with an individual to work on that this year. We're getting that service provided for us in Clay County as well because he's going through all of our documents. And so we're requesting an additional contract services. They will continue that through 2015. And I have it in the budget to contract for some of his time to also keep our program requirements up to date. With Bruce and Kent doing the field work, they just really have no time to keep the program updated. So we do have revenue through our licensing, our food, pool, and lodging license, so we have money to cover that contract. That's not an employee, it'll be contracted through Otter Tail. We also have some increased rent. As you can see, we did move to second floor. I don't know if Mr. Berg had mentioned that or not at the board meeting, but we had an expansion of our case managers. They were crammed into a small space for many years, and we had the ability to secure some office space on second floor. So there'll be a little increased rent, but that is also an area that produces quite a bit of revenue. And with our min choices in the adult health program, we anticipate that revenue to continue to cover those costs. I think maybe if you've heard from the juvenile detention, if Steve has presented, he was requesting full-time, a nurse to be moved to full-time. Has that been presented at all? We have a .8 in the juvenile detention center now, a nurse at .8, and he's requesting 1 FTE. So it would be the same nurse. She would just move into the juvenile detention center at 1 FTE, and he has revenue to cover that.
So do I understand your total request is 2% less
Yes.
than last year?
That's correct.
I think we could dismiss her now.
Okay, good.
You did good.
Do I get the star for the day?
You do.
Or for the week?
Nice work, Kathy.
Any questions or, okay. Thank you. Am I dismissed?
Unless you'd like to stay and visit.
Thanks.
You better break and run when you can.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break here before we, I gotta run down maybe. Okay, Rhonda.
And Mr. Chair, Rhonda is on page 59 of that big document. I'm sure she'll have a summary for you as well. And then on the goals and objectives, she has turned yours in, and she was 1 page prior to public health. So she's in front of public
I'm
health.
in front of, I heard public health set the bar this morning, so. I did pass out during the break a summary document. I think I laid it on your chair just because you had a lot of papers there. So this would be the document I would speak from.
Just bear with me just 1 minute here. Okay, Rhonda, looks like
All right.
we're set.
Okay, and I have Susan Roll with me from the auditor's office, who works with me pretty closely on the budget. So between the two of us, we can hopefully answer all your questions. So maybe, again, I would just speak from the document that I handed out, and then if there's any detail, we could go into the budget section of your papers. But so at the top, I just summarized what the 2014 levy request was, what the 2015 levy request is at this point, what is the difference in the percent increase. Now that has changed a little bit. I think Brian and Lori and Susan and I met yesterday. We've made some adjustments in the budget. So this does reflect those adjustments. What it doesn't reflect is the conversation I had with Kathy this morning about the detox. So that 30,000 that she indicated would be a reduction in the detox is not reflected here. So we'll make that adjustment. So that was good news for my budget anyway. Or for our budget, I should say.
Are you saying that takes care of your requested 25,000?
Yep, it sure does. So it'll be negative. So just recapping with the revenues to show a little bit about our revenues. So in 2014, the revenues that we budgeted was $9,432,940. And you'll see that the revenues budgeted for 2015 are 180,000 less than that, so $9,252,000. The biggest piece with that is that we have been working on reducing pass-through expenditures that come through our budget. So even though we have that large reduction in revenues, it doesn't really impact the levy as much because we've reduced the expenditures accordingly, so they balance. So that's why that levy request is quite a bit smaller. Our expenditures, that's the same reason why that expenditure, the budgeted expenditures is less as well, because again, we reduced the pass-through program expenditures. So maybe just to give an example of what that is if we have people on Medicaid waivers, some of the programs we would pay for their service, so it'd be an expenditure out of our budget, but then we would send a bill to the state and get reimbursed. So we're no longer doing as much of that paying out and collecting. We're having people go to providers that bill MA directly. So in that way,
you're not the third party.
Right, exactly. So we've been able to kind of move those out of our budget, even though they don't affect the bottom line. But that's kind of an example of what that is. Okay. Okay, so maybe going down into the details. The first areas there in blue are really all of our administrative lines, and they show up in 3 different places in our budget. The first one is the financial assistance unit. So this is our income maintenance unit that manages all of the public assistance programs. So MA, MFIP, food support, all of those kinds of programs. As you can see, we had just a slight increase from budget to budget, 1.51%, so that's the $45,921 indicated in the comments section. And the biggest bulk of the reason for that increase is the salaries and benefits, as they, people are eligible for steps. And then we had a small increase, well, $5,200 in state auditor increase in costs. So we had to budget for
So you don't incorporate any anticipated COLAs in your numbers?
We do not, no.
And that's good. I think we want that as a separate line.
Yeah. Child support administration, so this is Sandy Thorne's unit, all of our child support fraud and collections folks. Well, actually, some of the collections and fraud are included up in financial, but this is mostly the child support folks. So we had an increase just a little over $9,000 there, less than 1%. And again, that is related to those steps and benefits that people were budgeted for. And then also in here is, if you recall, a couple months ago, we did do a presentation on the Father's Resource Project. And if you remember, they were requesting an increase in the county's support for that program. That's that 11-county project. So I did include that in the 2015 budget, and that's what that increase of $5,000 is in that area. And then some of those expenditure increases were offset by some decreases. So we were able to go through some of those administrative lines and make some reductions in areas that.
So Rhonda, can I go back just a second to the increase in father resource program? Do we know what other counties did?
Yeah, they all have supported the increase, but after our board meeting, I did go back and ask if we could look at, because the budget was a little confusing. It went from September of 2014 to August of 2015. And so one of the things you had asked about is if we could, or you seemed more comfortable with, is doing a 4-month for 2014, and then looking at the request in 2015 along with the budget process. So my understanding is that all of the 11 counties except Douglas County has indicated support for the program and plan to budget for it. But they also approved or supported looking at 4 months from September to December and then going to an annual budget starting in January of 2015. So I do have scheduled to come back to the board on the 19th to kind of talk about the details of that.
Okay.
To request the funds for 2014 and then provide more information about the 2015.
Okay, John?
Can you find that 4 months in your budget, or do we need to allocate new funds in order to do that?
Well, it would be a new request to what we'd allocated, but I'll look through the budget to see where we can come up with that. It's about $3,300.
For a 4-month period?
Yeah.
Right.
But I did go ahead and include it so that you could consider it within the budget process. Okay, and then we go to the Social Service Administration. So this is all of our social workers and some of our administrative staff. We actually had a decrease from budget to budget there, and a big chunk of that was all of our turnover. We lost 3 supervisors, so those were big turnovers there, as well as I think we replaced almost 5 social workers that have kind of come and gone. So in looking at all the new staffing patterns, that did generate a savings to the budget in that area. And then we also, in the state auditor, we are seeing increased charges there, so I had to increase that 4,200. Other lines kind of went up and down, minimally adjusted throughout, but those were more the highlighted areas.
What is the state auditor, what are they doing more, or are they just at the salary increase for state auditor?
Well, they have to do more testing now because of the size of the grants and just the different programs. They have to actually go into the case files and do more grant testing. So they've expanded their services some.
So our annual fee that we pay for the state audit portions come out by department then?
Right.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought that was, that we paid that out of general funds.
The biggest portion comes out of the general fund, but we do split that into social services, highway, family.
Okay.
So, and what I have reflected here is just the increased amount. I want to say in financial, we probably have about 10,000 total budgeted, and in social services, maybe around the same. So those 2 increases, it's almost doubled from what we had budgeted. So. The MA pass-through area, that area is a little deceiving because, as I talked about before, this is where a lot of the pass-through activity goes. So even though there's quite a decrease in what we have budgeted, it doesn't impact the levy as much because it's balanced by a revenue decrease. So the pieces that are involved mostly in this area is our county burials, and those have stayed pretty steady. We've continued the budget of $85,000 in that area, so we didn't increase it from last year. And then the rural Minnesota SEP contract is also budgeted in this area, but no matter what we budget there, it's balanced by full revenue, so it doesn't impact the levy. It's all dependent on our grant. There's 2 areas that are impacted in this area, and that is we pay a share for any individual that goes into a nursing home that is under 65. We have a county share. And those expenditures look like they're increasing some. And then we also pay a share for any individuals that go into what's called an ICFMR so it's for individuals with developmental disabilities. And we have 3 individuals in ICFMR facilities, and the one facility is the Ann Carlson School in North Dakota, and it's very expensive. So our share has gone up. We are continuing to look at that because, again, those 2 individuals, if they were to leave that facility, then those expenditures would go down. But right now they're there and we don't have an anticipated discharge, so we'll continue to watch those. But that was a $17,000 increase just in those MA shares.
Did you say county barrels were 85,000?
County blades, yep. On average, we have about 40, 45 county-funded burials a year. Yep. Okay, on the flip side is all of our social service program areas. So starting with children's services, we have a slight decrease in that budget from year to year. It's not, the only levy impact there is the Lutheran Social Services 2% contract that I applied, which is just $2,000. Otherwise, really what we did is our out-of-home placements, if you recall, we budget those out-of-home placements in various places throughout the budget. So depending on where the expenditures are, we shift those dollars. And so we really just shifted some dollars out of children's services and put them into another area. So it's not really a levy impact, but it does change the bottom line in that area. Child care, this is where you see the increase. We moved money into child care for kids that are in placement or for families to prevent out-of-home placement. So this would be maybe a family, maybe we have a sibling group that goes into foster care and the foster parents work. So we need to help support child care for the kids that are in placement with the foster family. That's an example. Chemical dependency, just a very small increase there as well. However, this will change with the $30,000 detox contract reduction. That's where we'll see it in this area, so that'll change. Mental health, we have a decrease there. Again, this is really not a levy impact as much because we shifted placement dollars into child care here. We do have some provider contract increases in this area, and I did provide that as attachment, and we can talk about that. Overall, I applied a 2% contract adjustment for our providers, except for one contract, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But developmental disability services, we have a little bit of an increase there in expenditures. However, that increase is really offset by an increase in a grant. We got an additional $23,609 for our semi-independent living skills grant, and so we have to spend that on these services. But with that increased revenue, we do have a increased county share, because for every dollar we spend, the county gets we have a 30% share. So the $55,577 is that 30% county share in order to maximize the grant. So, and then in adult services, we have an increase there as well, and that primarily is the 2% provider contract increases, except for the one that I indicated was higher than that, and that is for Lutheran Social Services, our guardianship program. I actually increased that quite a bit more, and you'll see the details of that on the attachment, the first attachment. It's kind of toward the bottom, it's listed LSS guardianship. And you'll see that I did increase that budget 16.82%. So it went from $149,797 to $175,000. So that represents a $25,203 increase. So that's the majority of that increase in adult services. That particular program, we really are, that contract we're struggling with, and I do have a board presentation scheduled for August 19th, and I'll have LSS come and talk a little bit about it. But this is a contract that we have for folks that are coming through our adult protection system, folks that are have elderly, mental health, chemical health, that have been determined by the court to not be able to make decisions on their own. And they have no family or individuals or resources in order to obtain a guardian on their own. So we, the county, has some statutory obligations to assure that that need is met. And so we have a contract with LSS to do that. Right now, the numbers have been increasing, and LSS is very concerned that our contract amount is not enough for them to provide all the services that are needed. So I have a proposal that I wanted to talk with you about in a couple of weeks on increasing some of the resources for this year and then applied an increase for 2015. So it's one of those areas that I probably should have been paying better attention to last year and didn't give them the increase that we probably needed to at that point.
Next question, go back to child care.
Okay.
Now, we put foster kids into a home, and they then need child care, daycare. Do they get the same rate then, or is there a rate adjusted? I mean, or do we pay them the same rate plus child care?
Yeah, you know, all of those factors are considered. So there's some state guidelines as to how rates are figured. There's a base amount that families get, irregardless of child care needs, if the county's paying for additional child care. But then there's what's called a difficulty of care assessment that we do, and we consider child care in that document as well. So if we're paying for child care, we wouldn't be attributing difficulty of care points for those children, and so it would be compensated. Some of these are, you know, again, one of our first protocol is to always look for family members if they can be the provider of foster care. Depending on the kids that we place, some kids we have concerns might not be appropriate for a child care setting, so we try to find families that maybe don't both work out of the home or require child care. But more and more in our recruitment efforts, we have parents, both foster parents working, so we kind of have to work with that the best that we can. But again, those expenses are all factored in. I also did attach our out-of-home placements. We did not make any increases in the budget for out-of-home placements. And if you want to, that last attachment, if you look right in the middle, it says 2014 budget. If you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that we budgeted $2,265,887. And based on our expenditures thus far, we're trending to meet that and maybe go over that a little bit, which is has not been the case in the last couple of years. We've been able to come under budget. We are seeing some more placements, and hopefully it evens out the next part of the year, but we are trending high in our placements this year. So we didn't, that's a little concern because we didn't increase the budget at all for 2015, and we didn't account for provider rate increases, because many of those providers will have some provider rate increases. But we're hoping, you know, it's an ebb and flow, so we're hoping that we can maintain. So when we make the adjustment for detox, this will look a little different than we'll have a negative %. But So we tried, where we had some losses, we tried to make some expenditure adjustments to keep things fairly stable. The biggest area I felt we needed to increase was that guardianship contract, and then applying the 2% to the other, some of the other contracts.
Well, it's, it looks good. I'm surprised. I'm curious, when you're doing your budgeting, are you starting out with really trying to make cuts, or are you just putting together and at the end how do you end up? I mean, it's a really good results, but were you as surprised as we are when we see the local decreases in these kind of things?
Well, to be honest, there's some things in here that my supervisors would want me to consider that we didn't. We have some program concerns in adult protection and child protection. Those numbers are increasing, and my supervisors and staff are concerned about managing the workload. But I did not put any staffing requests in here. We do have, and we talked about this with Brian and Lori yesterday, we do have about 3 or 4 program areas where revenues have been trending low in 2014. So Susan and I have been, but we decided not to cut them in the budget, so we kept them at the same level. So it's a little risky there, but we see ebbing and flowing in those revenues too, so we're going to take a look at the detail and see if we can figure out what's impacting that and try to get those back up. So, and when we go through the budget, Susan and I are like, okay, well, this looks like we could bring this down, but this one needs to go up, so then we try to find, so we do try to find those adjustments in the budget when we go through it.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, Rhonda, I think that's good for the day, huh?
Okay.
Thank you. We'll see you back here soon. And before we do Brian's closed session deal here, I just wanted to give an update on my committee meetings here. We did have Grant had talked about the Oakport Joint Powers Board meeting where the City of Moorhead was asking their Joint Powers Board to offer some insight into hunting into what will be the annexed area of Oakport. And we had some residents there as well, and obviously you don't find hunting in the City of Moorhead right now, and under the rural residential zone, I think our committee was basically saying that there needed to be something in that rural area, and it kind of goes to what's actually happened on the Fargo side right now. They're having so much problems with it, they end up having to have these in-town hunts just to keep the herd in check, and so I would anticipate that we're going to come to a reasonable conclusion, and then it's going to be as to where within that Track 2 area coming into the city hunting will be allowed. So I think there was good dialogue. Grant, would you agree on it? And I think like Grant said, that's ultimately going to be up to the city, but I think they realize that some sort of hunting out there will be better than none just because of the heavy population of deer. And there's a lot of them that end up being killed on the road, and you can have injury accidents as a result of that. So, then the other meeting that we had was the Solid Waste Advisory meeting, and that one, John touched on that. We did have some issues out there in regards to our leachate system out there that we have to make some corrections on, that and the gas flaring, there's some issues with the gas flaring, so our staff and our engineers are on top of that, and hopefully they'll have that resolved very shortly. Then last week, I did meet with Steve in the Juvenile Detention Center. There's another county who's interested in maybe housing some juveniles in our center. The discussions on that are just getting going, and they wish to remain anonymous at this point in time, but we'll continue. We're always looking for more beds in our facility, and that would help the revenue. So stay tuned on that one, and that's all I have. So at this point, we're down, and Administrator Berg, you have requested to have your performance in closed session. All right, so with that, a motion to close, or did we do it all?
I move to close the session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, all right, we'll reconvene after going into closed session, and we went into closed session at the request of our county administrator for the purpose of an annual performance evaluation. Oh, yeah. Okay, call back to order.
Yeah, I had made a motion to reopen our session.
Second.
We had a motion and a second to reopen. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Vicki. So we had our annual performance evaluation of our administrator, and he's up also now for a step increase. So what would be the board's wishes?
I would make a motion to increase the step from step 8 to step 9.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I mean, as far as concerning ratings and stuff like that, do we ever give more, or we just do step increases? Or is that a different process?
This is kind of tied to a grid, so it's
very good.
We try to stay with the grid.
I'll leave it to that.
Okay, and I just will comment whether he likes it or not. In our, we certainly had a very high opinion of Mr. Berg's ability to administer the county, and we're very pleased with it. So with that, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, I believe that covers everything on the agenda for today, so we will stand adjourned.